I want some chemical studies of what's in that cup.
And we are live, just so you know, Councilmember Shade.
Thank you, Matt. Appreciate everybody waiting for me to take a quick break after a long public safety meeting. We're going to call to order. We're going to call to order the Committee on Real Estate for this Monday, August 16th. And Councilmember Jackson, will you lead us in a moment of silence on invocation, please?
Yes, let's bow our heads. Lord God, we thank you that you've given us this new day. I pray that we will be responsible and responsive to live into it on your behalf and as you will, and for the benefit and the public safety and welfare of our citizens. Thank you for giving us the responsibilities to help our city be good stewards of our land, our contracts, and our commitments. In your name we pray. Amen.
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 I think Councilmember Wary and I should get an award for a number of attempted attempts to contact one another today, over the weekend. So I'm glad to see you live and in color, Councilmember Wary. We can talk.
Got championship telephone tag.
we did, and we'll chat a little bit later. But good to see you on board. I hope everybody had a good weekend. I know the rain was kind of messed up a lot of our plans, but do that as it may. So thank you for those prayer, Councilmember Jackson. Item number one, I'm sorry, listed as A, is a request for approval to the purchase some property by the city and Shipyard Creek Associates, 10 acres off of 2001 Sewanee Road in North Charleston. This is, I think, to
Councilmember Shade, can we get a motion on the minutes?
I move that we accept the minutes or approve the minutes.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Submitted.
Second.
Yeah. Bethany, you keeping me really on task today. I appreciate that. And,
you are fine.
Okay, we got a motion to approve the minutes. All those in favor say aye.
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 Ayes have it. Thank you. All right, so back to item number A, which is the purchase of this property. I think this is to replace the public works facility property. And Mayor, are you recused from?
I'm recusing myself, Mr. Chairman, even though my son is not the agent for the seller. Another agent in his company is, and now that Joseph is a stockholder of the company, I respectfully recuse myself.
Thank you for doing that, Mr. Mayor. So Julia Copeland, do you want to lead us on discussion of this item? What this is for?
Good afternoon. Actually, I've got David Humphreys here and Jane Stoney. David was the one who negotiated, well, not negotiated, but handled the terms of the agreement and can give you some details point by point on this particular sale.
Sure. Hello, everyone. This is David.
Mr. Chair, I'm sorry to interrupt, but could we maybe understand the reasons for this? I understand that the lawyers have handled the details and the agreements, but I personally don't know the purpose in buying this land. So I would love to.
That's what I think we're going to talk a little bit about, Councilmember Jackson, is the purpose of purchasing the land.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
So my understanding of purchasing the land is to replace the facility that we're currently leasing, which the lease is coming up on, where our public works facilities are located. We're essentially getting booted out. So we need to find a new home sooner than later. And that this is land that's being available to us. Is that accurate, Ms. Copeland?
Yes, sir. And apparently, with regard to the property that we currently own, there's not enough to accommodate the amount of square footage that we need to build a new public works facility at present. So that's why we're looking at this 10-acre tract.
That answer your question, Councilmember Jackson?
Yeah, and I would also hope that there's a map that can be shown to us. Is this part of that the bigger property that the railway wants to come through? Is that still what's on the table here? I just think a little scope would help all of us to make a good decision strategically.
This is property where, and it's close to the existing new port facility, the Hugh Leatherman facility. It's off of King Street, off of Meeting Street, King Street Extension area. I rode over there the other day in anticipation of this property. So it has a strategic location to the existing brand new port, which will probably, as I understand, accommodate or be used for collateral work that a port normally generates over there. So it's going to probably become valuable, much more valuable property over time as things happen when a port is in full gear operation, as we've seen in past history. It's also very, to my understanding, conveniently located to right outside the outskirts of the city of Charleston. This property is not technically in the boundaries of the city of Charleston. I think it's actually either unincorporated or in the city of North Charleston. But strategically located, it gives us a good landing spot where we're still part of the Peninsula Neck areas we have commonly referred to, and not too far from where we have our existing facility. So, and it is 10 acres. That's a pretty good chunk of land to have on the peninsula anywhere, quite frankly. So that's my understanding of the backdrop. Ms. Bailey, is there anything that I'm missing with those comments that maybe you could shed some more light on?
Council member, I think you gave a great summary. I'm happy to answer any questions. I know David and Julia are as well. I would like to point out that actually the proposed purchase price is actually below the appraised value. The appraisal came back at $7,560,000.
Well, that would be a first.
Yes.
Yeah, that's almost $1.5 million below market value. That's a pretty good bargain for us. So, Councilmember Johnson, if you don't mind, let's hear from Mr. Humphreys or Ms. Stoney, and then we can pick back up with any further discussions as to the need. And David, if you do have a map or something that we could show on screen, or anybody for us to have a visual, would always be helpful. So
That's
David,
great. Thank you so much. Thank you.
David.
I don't have a map. I'm not video hooked up right now, but it's, if you can picture where sort of like Spruill Avenue is, where it, if you look between, if you know where Shipyard Creek is, and then there's like the Jennings Towing and Garage. So it's kind of between the Port Access Road and Shipyard Creek, I think pretty close to fronting right on the new Port Access Road. And its street address is 2001 Sewanee Road. But I just don't have anything or the tech savvy to share it. There you go. Somebody put it up.
Thank you, Chip.
You can always rely on Chip when it comes to the technology issues like that. He really does come through in the pinch. Thank you, Chip.
No problem. Yes, sir.
Chip, is that a pretty recent aerial view of it, by the way? Because it looks like a barge is in the river, or the docks over there.
I think that should be as of 2019. Yeah, 2019.
Okay.
There you go. That zoom out will show you a little better. And over to the right is where Shipyard
2019
Creek is. So yeah. So just the nuts and bolts of the contract. Purchase price of $6,180,000. The seller is called Shipyard Creek Associates LLC. It has the city putting up earnest money of $50,000 and then entering into, or having a due diligence period during which we would have a free look and could get out for any reason, expiring on March 31st of 2022. And then after that, I believe closing is, I believe either 30 or 45 days following that. The issues that we need to talk about are there are a couple of things going on. One is that we know the site has got some environmental issues associated with it. And so what we are going to need to do is get a phase one and then pursue a voluntary cleanup contract with DHEC. And so I know a lot of you are probably familiar with the VCC process, but basically it's a way for us, in order to enjoy the protections of a voluntary cleanup contract, what we have to do is get it applied for into some level of finality with DHEC before we close on it. And so what that is DHEC saying, it's kind of the Brownsfields program where they're basically saying, okay, you didn't have anything to do with any contamination that's on the site. We would love for it not to just sit there forever without anybody doing anything to protect it any further. So if you will agree to a work plan with us to do certain measures, then we will give you all sorts of liability protections. So we get a covenant not to sue from DHEC, so DHEC won't come try to do an enforcement action on us. We get some third-party liability protection. So it's kind of what my environmental partners tell me is it's sort of the gold standard in terms of what you can get when you're dealing with acquiring a site that has environmental issues. And so we'll quickly get our arms around during the due diligence period exactly what those issues are and what DHEC is going to be looking for in terms of any action, if any, by the city with respect to the property. Sometimes their quote work plan is really nothing more than, agreeing that it will only be used for, won't ever be a daycare or won't ever be a residential site, something like that. So my understanding from talks with the sellers and their attorneys is that the environmental, while it's something that we need to deal with and be sure we get a VCC, that it's all in keeping with what you'd expect to find when you're buying, a site for a public works facility in this part of town. So what we've got in the contract is some language that basically what the seller was a little concerned about is, we would have this 125-day due diligence period. And then come day 122, we say, oh, well, we still don't have a VCC with DHEC. We need more time. So we were a little concerned, though, that we may not be able to get all the way through the DHEC process and get what we need by that 125-day mark. So what we agreed to is we can actually push that due diligence period out until March 31st, 2022, so long as we have met certain criteria in terms of making application for the VCC, within 30 days, and then within 15 days after we get the draft back from DHEC responding to it. And then, so it sort of hems us in. If we need that extra time to get to March 31st, it hems us into being responsive to DHEC, but doesn't penalize our right to get that extra time if DHEC is slow on their end to get things to us. So it's a 30-day, 30 days, we've got to submit the application, then they'll respond at some point, and then within 15 days of DHEC's response, we've got to review it and submit any comments or proposed revisions to the VCC. And then once they send it to us, we've got 45 days, once it's agreed to and they send it to us, we've got 45 days to enter into an acceptable VCC. That's to make sure that if we need to go back to council for anything, we've got plenty of time to do that. And then within 30 days after getting the final VCC, we've got to submit our work plan to them. So if we do all of that, then we can have additional time beyond the 125-day due diligence period up to, but not in excess of March 31st, 2022. But again, until the 125th day, we're in a complete free look. The other wrinkle on this transaction is that we have in here a contingency for getting the property annexed from the city of North Charleston into the city. And so that's an issue we can talk about. I don't know where we are with that process currently. I understand there may be some hesitancy from North Charleston, so we just need to, I think, continue working through that process, unless anybody has an update that they'd like to share on that front.
And maybe this is somebody else from our legal side can answer this question, David, but what other property abuts up to this that would be in the city, or is it an unannexed area in that area?
Looks like chips on it.
Yep.
The purple is North Charleston and the pink ish is Charleston. So
City of
all this
Charleston
is
or
in
Charleston County?
City of Charleston. So
Okay.
this would be Charleston County. This would be Charleston. This would be North Charleston.
So, I mean, literally, it would butt up, this, would be going across the street, literally, to annex that into our city.
Yes, sir.
And Chip, along with what David was just telling us a few seconds ago, was this part of the Navy base at one point? We know.
I'm not positive. Let me see if I can.
I know that the area right around it was, and I think where the port, the new port was part of the Navy base. That's my understanding.
I'm not sure.
Mr.
Okay.
Chairman, I thought it was part of the McAlloy plant site.
Okay,
I think it was McAlloy.
That's correct.
which would explain why there's an environmental issue on the property.
Yeah.
Right. Yes, sir.
All right, so David, we talked about the environmental issue, the terms of the contract, the contingency into the city. And I may have cut you off. Was there another component you needed to discuss with us?
I'm just looking, I've got some bullet points here. Let me make sure I didn't fail to hit anything. There's a lease that will be in place for a tail period after we acquire it. That will then burn off, and then at that point we would be in a position to go ahead and commence work on the public works facility. And then just I guess I would just say that the purchase and sale agreement that we negotiated is pretty light on seller representations and warranties. They were pretty dogmatic about you guys do your own environmental due diligence and all that sort of stuff. So they sort of said we've got mounds of paper on the environmental history of this property, and we'll provide it all to you, and then you need to get with your own environmental advisors and get comfortable. So that's what we'll be doing.
Right.
And then if other than the few limited reps that they give, it's as is where is. If the city were to default, then the earnest money would serve as liquidated damages. And if the seller were to default, then we can pursue specific performance. So seek to have a judge tell them you got to deliver a deed, or we can terminate, get the earnest money back, and seek to recover our out-of-pocket due diligence costs and expenses capped at $100,000.
Very good. All right. Let me entertain a motion for approval of A, and then we can go into the discussion part of it. I'd entertain a motion that we approve item number A.
So moved.
I'll second.
Okay. Then we'll open up for discussion. Councilman Ware, since you're the chairman of the Public Works Committee, I was hoping that you would jump in first. So I see your hand up.
I'm kind of sitting back waiting here. How many other sites do we have under consideration? Is this the only site to relocate public works? I mean, our legal, everybody from real estate.
Ms. Bailey, can you answer that for us?
Council member, this is Lee. As of now, this is the only site under consideration.
Okay, well, thank you. We've known that we've had to move this site for a good period of time. This is a very complicated site. I mean, north of 600,000 per acre. I think it's too high, without mentioning a contaminated piece of property. As far as being close to the port and all of that, our public works, we don't need water access. We don't need port access for our public works department to perform its functions across the city of Charleston. I just believe we can find a 10-acre tract less than $6 million. So someplace closer to city of Charleston. If we were in the container business or something like that, then this is a good buy from a pricing standpoint. some kind of port warehousing business or something like that. But that's not our function. Granted, it's close to where it was, but I think we need to seek several sites and make a decision on that. I don't think we should have one site and one site only to choose from the benefit of the taxpayers. I just don't see where that's proper due diligence. So you got me thinking it's got to be a piece of property, 10 acres or something, West Ashley. I don't know if we go as far away as James Island, council lady, but I think it's too high, and I think the property is too complicated with contamination. So I think buying a contaminated piece of property for north of 600,000 an acre is too much. So I'm gonna be voting against this one for those and other reasons. I think we need to have more than one site for one choice to select. And I think if we're gonna really put serious work into this, we need to get 3 or 4 locations out there from us to choose one. So that's my feeling on it.
Thank you, sir.
$6 million piece of contaminated property.
Ms. Bailey, can you give us a report? When is the property where we are now on Milford Street? Can you? I know we need to leave there. Is that because the lease runs out? And when does the lease run out?
Someone who's been with the city longer may want to jump in and give a little bit more detailed history, since I wasn't with the city at the time that this transaction occurred. But my understanding is that that we have an agreement in place right now with the new property owner that we sold the property to, and as part of the sale, we agreed that once they give us 3 years notice, we have to leave the site. The W.R. Grace property on Harmon Street that the city currently owns, I believe, was purchased again before I joined the city, in contemplation of moving all or at least a portion of what's currently at the Milford Street property. I believe that that's probably still going to be what happens. But as the city has grown exponentially very quickly, it doesn't appear that it's going to house everything. So I don't know if anybody from capital projects or planning wants to jump in. I don't know, Christopher, if you want to chime in on anything. But that is why we need to relocate.
I think that one of the questions that, and I think what Councilmember Waring is bringing to our attention, what is sort of our deadline when we've got to be out of Milford? You said 3 years after we sold it or signed the contract. What is our drop deadline that we're going to vacate?
So we will have to vacate within 3 years of them providing us notice. And as of now, we have not received notice. But obviously, this is going to be a big move, and we're trying to get ahead of it, as opposed to being reactive and scrambling to try to move such a huge part of our city services.
So we don't have, I hate to use this analogy, we don't have a drop dead deadline looming in the horizon. The clock hasn't started to tick yet because they haven't given us notice.
Chairman, yes, sir, that is correct.
Okay.
Councilman Shea,
Yes, sir.
I think the reasons why this property was looked at and was attractive is because it's contiguous to the TIF district. And I think one of the thoughts was this could possibly be purchased and developed with TIF financing.
Okay. And can you, Mr. Drew, if anybody else can answer this for us, the facility that we moved, that we've got an option on or ready to buy, is not adequate to move all our public works facilities there?
Yeah, I think that's correct.
Councilmember Shade, we currently own the Grace site.
Okay. And do we, is anybody from Public Works, is Mr. O'Brien available to maybe give us some more insight on this? Or Mr. Kronsberg?
I can just jump in for a minute, see if I can help clarify that. Like Amy referenced, the W.R. Grace site is currently owned by the city, and Lee had a pretty well developed explanation that with our current needs and our future needs, that site doesn't suffice in size for future planning of the public works facility. So that's why this effort to locate an additional piece of property was undertaken to plan for the future, if you will. So that's we have one site. It's not big enough, and there's some future rail line issues associated with it. And then again, this was a new site that came up that would fit almost everything on there, although we haven't done any detailed planning studies yet. Hope that explains it a little bit more.
Okay, can I add something to that? So
Yes,
it's
ma'am,
not
Ms.
just
Moore.
the public, it's not just the public works facility either. It was, you know, we have fire logistics that we need to move and some other stormwater and all of the streets and sidewalks, regular fleet. So it's all of that on Milford that needs to be moved. And I believe the BOASA would just have public works and maybe stormwater on it. And then Grace could maybe house the other things. And all of this was supposed to be funded with TIF dollars in that TIF district. That's why the Grace site was ours to use and to use TIF funds for. The Boasso property is not within the TIF district and it's not within the city of Charleston. So unless we get annexed in, we can't, and then do the resolution with council, we wouldn't be able to use TIF dollars. So those things have to happen as well, if that gives any more clarification.
And that was one of the contingencies that Mr. Humphries was talking about with it being annexed into the city.
That's correct. And then we'll need to do a resolution with city council as well.
Councilmember Jackson, I think you had your hand up. And
Yeah, I wanted to know more about that annexation. I haven't been on council since we've tried to annex in from another jurisdiction. So I don't know what the odds are about that. And maybe that would need an executive session to be able to educate us more fully. I also wondered if we would give this an approval today at real estate, it would go to Ways and Means at the meeting tomorrow. But would it come back for any other approvals at the end of due diligence, or would this be the final decision that the whole council would make?
I believe this would be it.
Yeah, as currently drafted, the contract would continue on through due diligence and go hard, so to speak, unless we decided to terminate. So there would not be another return to council unless we could certainly add something in there about that, but that could create problems with the seller. I don't know.
And understanding all of the difficulties of annexation, that would be worked out in 125 days. Is that, and if not, then that would be a reason to stop?
As I understand it, the annexation is key because, well, A, we would like to have our public works facility in our own city, of course, but B, I think we need to be in the city in order to be able to use TIF dollars to construct the facility. So my guess is that if we didn't work out the annexation, then we would probably have to terminate.
So is anyone able to educate us about the, difficulties in more detail? Or, is this a original thinking that we're doing with our neighbors in North Charleston? Have we ever done this before?
I don't know if there's the history of doing it before, but my understanding of annexation laws, you have to have the city that it currently is in consent to do this, and they don't consent, you might as well just forget about doing that. So we would need North Charleston's approval to get the first base on this thing.
Right.
Any other questions, comments, concerns?
This is
Councilmember
Edmund. I had one other comment I wanted to add to this. Councilmember Waring talked about the environmental on the site, and actually I'm very familiar with the site. I worked for a design firm when this whole development was created many years ago. This site, the majority of it was cleaned up to industrial standards. And if this was purchased and public service was there, it would be an industrial use, so it's compatible from a cleanup standpoint. Now, I don't think the entire site has been cleaned up, and I spoke with SNME about some leftover portions of McAloy. So I may not be completely apprised of everything that's going on that site, but I don't think there's going to be a major cleanup out there, but we still would approach the VCC though.
Thank you for that clarification. Any other comments, questions, concerns? Councilmember Rappel? All right. So we have a motion to approve in a second. Any further discussion on item A? All right, we'll call the vote. The mayor is just the four of us. All those in favor of approving the request for approval of the purchase and sale agreement for this property signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Any nays?
Nay.
Okay. Okay. All right. We'll pass it on for ways and means for that consideration. Thank you all for that. Item B is request for approval of a license agreement with Tour Management Inc. for the Carolina Belle, operator of the Maritime Center. Ms. Copeland, is this yours as well? Matt, you go talk about this one for us? Thank you.
Chairman, this is Matt. This is a request for approval of a license agreement with Tour Management Services, otherwise known as Charleston Harbor Tours, for their commercial vessel, the Carolina Belle. We previously had a 5-year agreement. It was a 1-year agreement with two 2-year renewal options on it. That expires at the end of this month. This is a request for a new license agreement, essentially based on the same terms. Some of the financial numbers have been adjusted to get to where we are currently with the cost of dockage and things of that nature. The only other change is 1 year with 2 1-year renewal options, so 3 years in total. This was a request from Councilmember Del Chapo just because of the changing scope of the area there and not knowing how things would be. And from some feedback from some of the condos, Anson House, Lawrence Place, Dockside.
My only question with this is how is this going to impact, if anything, with the International African American Museum being next door?
Well, it won't directly. I will tell you that Charleston Harbor Tours is having conversations, from my understanding, with the IAM about trying to set up some very specific types of tours associated with the museum. But really the only impact would be just the interaction of visitors maybe coming to take a trip on their vessel and those coming to the museum. That's really kind of the only impact there would be.
Okay. I'll entertain a motion for approval for item number B.
I move.
So move.
Right.
Second.
Any further discussion or questions about this item number B? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Ayes have it. Item C, request for approval of a 5-year lease and facilities use agreement between the city and Charleston Stage for the Dock Street Theater. Includes the lease of existing office space on the 3rd floor and terms and conditions for the use of theater for performance and technical days, I'm sorry. Matt, is this yours as well?
Yes, sir.
Right.
So this was an agreement with the Charleston Stage. We have an existing agreement for office space on the 3rd floor. This is to continue that for another 5 years under the same terms and conditions we had previously. What else we are doing is we are putting in performance and technical day rental into writing. We have had a practice with them for years, but we are really just putting it into an actual formal written agreement.
Okay. I'll entertain a motion for approval of item C.
So move.
There's a second.
I'll second.
Okay. Any further discussion as to item C? All right. Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? The ayes have it. Item number D is request for approval of the first amendment to the management and operating agreement between the city and the Charleston Area Convention and Visitors Bureau regarding the visitor center, bus shed, best friend, museum, John Street parking, and VRTC Meeting Street parking lot. All right. Matt, is this the Matt?
Time to charm. Yes,
That's on
sir.
fire right now.
Yep.
Keep
So
on
this-
rolling, baby. Keep on rolling.
This is a First Amendment to the management agreement with the CACVB for the VRTC complex, which encompasses all those areas that you mentioned. There's two parts to this amendment. The first is cleaning up some of the exhibits language for the John Street lot. It was originally drafted for 31 spaces. However, there are 3 spaces that are not usable for parking because of various mechanical equipment for the facility. So the first part of this is just cleaning this up and changing it from 31 spaces to 28 spaces and adjusting the lease amount for that change. The second and bigger part is the addition of the front meetings, the VRTC Meeting Street surface lot. This would lease the lot to the CACVB to manage, much like the John Street lot, for the remainder of the management agreement. It's based on 200, I think it's 30,000, sorry, correct me, 30,000 or 40,000, $230,000 the first year and increasing at 7.5% per year and capped at $390,000.
Okay. I entertain a motion for item D.
And Mr. Chairman, Matt, that rental amount was based upon a full $125 per parking space. And remind me, that relates at least equivalent to what the city had been earning off the lot prior to that point?
So yes, sir, Mayor, in reference to John Street, we base it on $125 per space, which kind of equates to what we make. It's a metered lot there. For the front surface lot, it does a bit better business. So we looked at the essentially history, the revenue generated history over the last 8 years of the VRTC lot to kind of come up with what we thought would make the city whole. And as things have changed in that area and how we see parking revenue increasing, to make sure that we were kept financially stable with this deal.
Great, thank you.
All right. Is there a motion to approve item number D?
I move for approval.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion by any members of council of this committee? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Ayes have it. Item E is too long to read, but it involves the transfer of land to the Charleston Redevelopment Corporation, consisting of 0.31 acres from the South Carolina Department of Transportation. This is the King Street off-ramp area. So can Matt, you give us a little bit of description of what this is about on item number E?
Yep, Matt Ojala is going in for Gianna today. The item before you is a request to facilitate the creation of rental workforce housing by authorizing the mayor to execute a transfer agreement and all other necessary documents for the city's transfer of a parcel to the CRC's Palmetto Community Land Trust. The parcel contains 0.31 acres. It's a portion of SCDOT right-of-way located at the intersection of Fishburne and Cumming Streets. And that parcel, which is being conveyed to the city by SCDOT, would be then transferred to the CRC and would be subject to land trust program guidelines. And by partnering with the CRC's Palmetto Community Land Trust, housing developed on the site would remain affordable for perpetuity. In addition, the deed shall also contain an automatic right of reversion in the event the developer does not initiate construction of an affordable housing project within 3 years. The CRC is currently determining how homes could best be situated on the site. And I believe F.A. Johnson with the CRC is on the line to help field any questions regarding potential development opportunities on the parcel. Thank you.
That was a very complicated explanation, and I think it would sort of fit into the length of the description under item E. So is there a motion to adopt item E?
I move we approve.
Is there a second?
I'll say.
All right, anybody have any, I'm sure somebody's got a question about this. Does anybody have a question about item E they want to talk about or discussion of it? Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor.
It's not a really big lot, and frankly, it backs up right to Septima Clark Parkway. So I did want to ask Mr. Johnson how many, it might just be a few, 2 or 3 units he thinks he could place on the site.
Mayor, are you able to hear me?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Okay. Yes. Good afternoon. I do think it will be under 6 units, most likely. We've looked at some existing plans to see could we fit some quadruplexes on there. The challenge, in addition to being a small site, is there's a stormwater drain that runs diagonally across a portion of that site. So I don't think it's going to be real high density. Hopefully we can use that for parking, but we will try and maximize as much as we can, but probably I'll say at most probably like 6 units.
All right, thank you, sir. That'd be more than I thought, to be honest with you.
I'm pushing it with that, please, sir. I'm being aggressive.
Mr. Johnson, that does clarify a lot of stuff. Thank you for that input.
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. Anybody else have any questions, concerns? Further discussion on item E? All those in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Ayes have it. Item F is a memorandum of understanding with the city and Landmark. This is for the Sumar Street redevelopment. And I've had several discussions with the mayor and with Copeland on this issue. So Julia, you want to give us an update of where we are with this MOU as of 3/48? I wasn't sure where we were as of 9/48 this morning, but here we are.
Yeah, unfortunately, as of 3:48 today, we still not have come to a meeting of the minds. We're still negotiating some small terms, but I think we're very close. But it just came to the point where we didn't want to dump a document on this committee and council at the last minute. We want to give you the opportunity to review it and process it and consider it at the September meetings.
So members of the committee, this is the memorandum of understanding for the development of the Piggly Wiggly site. This has been, I'll just share with you, a laborious process. Is much longer than I anticipated. The mayor knows my frustration, and Ms. Copeland knows my frustration. So does the Landmark folks. I've expressed myself very clearly of how I feel about where we are with this and the lack of progress with this thing. We started the negotiations back in a year ago, and I just don't, I'm sorry, I just don't understand why we're having this difficulty, quite frankly, with you. And I'm frustrated. I know that many of my constituents are frustrated with this development. I've heard from Councilmember Waring. I can pretty much anticipate what he's going to say right now, and it's just, I'm flabbergasted with the whole process, quite frankly. And I'm about to pull whatever hair I got left on my side of my head out. And quite frankly, I'm mad. I'll just leave it at that. So, Mayor.
So thank you, Mr. Chairman. I will let you know there was really just one point that we were waiting to resolve last week, and when it didn't resolve early this morning, it led to your frustration and mine. But I did speak directly to Jason Ward, and I feel like verbally we worked out a very good resolution to that point. And so, and that's the last one. So we'll have it at your next committee meeting. In fact, we've asked the developer just to go ahead and sign it, and before it even comes to us, so we're sure that he doesn't ask for any more changes. And if it's needed for purposes of this agenda, I'd move for its deferral.
I'll second.
Councilman Waring? I'm gonna call on you anyhow before you raise your hand, because
No, listen, I'm not calling it. I'm not gonna speak to, you know, I've had my emotional outbursts about this. But I do believe that we've got enough new people on council that we need to have another presentation on what we'd like to see happen at this Piggly Wiggly site. It has been years since the initial proposal was presented to council. And I dare say a majority of council right now, if their life depended on it, if you ask them what's going to be built on that site, or even through this developer, what's going to be put there, I think you'd have to kill them, because I don't think they know. And I don't think it should be that way. You are taking on too much stress. I understand why, Mr. Chairman, because this is in the CDO district, but that gateway belongs to all of us. And we all are concerned about what's going to take place there. You know, last rendition that I saw, you know, my good friend developed it, but it's got a big old tower, tall enough that you can see the Ashley River. In the aftermath, looking at that, all I can think of University of Texas, you know, at Austin, you know, when a person got up in the tower, you know, really seriously, you know, this day of open carry that we got around here. I don't know that that's the best thing to have at that site. Maybe we have a big water fountain like they have down at what's the pretty park down in Savannah? You know, the park in Savannah that has that big white fountain. Mr. Mayor, help me out, but can't think of that park right now. It's in downtown Savannah. But in other words, some of the stuff we need to go back to the drawing board on it. You know, again, this, you know, one developer and one developer only, I don't believe is the right way this should be done. That's what much smaller piece of property, but that's what North Charleston did with the Noisette project. Had a wonderful piece of property along the waterway. Somehow we went in a room and came out with, they did, with one developer, and they wasted 10 years on developing what is a wonderful tract on the waterfront right now. This is a gateway that we get it planted the right way one time around. You know, we successfully fought, all of us did, including you, Mr. Chairman, to stop a 20-tank gas station from being at the gateway there, you know, making it look like anywhere USA. But this is a chance for Charleston, I mean, for the city of Charleston to establish, or I should say reestablish, a gateway coming into the birthplace of South Carolina. And right now, too much of council doesn't know the specifics on what's going to unfold. And respectfully, Mr. Mayor, even if they just go and sign the agreement, we don't know what that is. I think you and Mr. Mayor and Councilman Shahid probably knows more than everybody else. As I said before, you know, we paid a premium for that property. And I think we all should go forward, not divided in what's going to happen there. And right now, we're just not in that position. So first, I would hope, I'm going to vote for the deferral, but I would hope that we would have a presentation on what we would like to see unfold there so we can develop a consensus as a council as opposed to an arm wrestling contest as what's supposed to go there. So I'm going to support the deferral.
Thank you, Councilman Waring. And you know, I won't take the credit for I participated in that 20 pump gas station, and it was a huge community effort, including my predecessor, who spoke very eloquently there. And other members of the community, I think even Mr. Tinkler showed up for that, if I recall properly. And we did. We were very successful in defeating that because of everything you just said. This is, you and I have beat this drum the same way. This is the gateway to the birthplace of South Carolina, the gateway to Charleston. In our earlier meeting we had on public safety, we talked about the potential of what this property could do for the city of Charleston, for all the citizens. And you're right, we got one shot at this thing, and one shot only. In your analogy with the Noisette project is probably right on, and we've got to be diligent with this thing, which is part of my frustration. I think you're right. I think we'll go back and show the design that we had in mind to all of council, so they see this. I think that's a good idea. And we could probably do that before this thing comes back to us with the MOU. I just hope and pray that this is what they have promised us and can come through with it at this point. So we'll defer it. We'll come back with more discussions on this and see what it is. And maybe even if we have to do a special workshop meeting on this thing, we could do that. But I think your point is well taken on the presentation part of it. So all those in favor of deferring item F, signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? The ayes have it. All right. District 11 is back in the news again on an annexation. Slowly but surely, Councilmember Pell is expanding his district. So this is considered an annexation for 2233 Riverland Drive, which consists of 0.27 acres. Mr. Morgan, anything you want to tell us about this property?
Mr. Chairman, it's just a single family residence in Riverland Terrace.
You can't get much more bland than that, Mr. Morgan. Thank you. All right, I'll entertain a motion to accept the annexation of 233 Riverland Drive, a single family
I'm
residence.
gonna move for approval to expand Councilman Ross's district.
I'll second.
Any further discussions on item G? All right.
Welcome to District 11, Alex. Happy to have you. Talk to your neighbors. We need as much as Riverland Terrace as we can get.
I need a vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Ayes have it. All right. I think that's it. And remarkably, we kept it within an hour. You got 3 minutes, Councilman Waring.
I know, man. I know. I gotta try to keep up with you. So see everybody in a little bit.
All right. So we are, unless there's any further business, we're going to adjourn. Thank you all, particularly the staff, for a wonderful job that you always do in keeping us forward on this. We are adjourned. Thank you.